Hello again. It's Rob here, back with Sandi. We've got some more questions of Antemedi, or Sandi has. So we'll see what transpires.
Shall I ask a question?
Indeed.
Would Antemedi be able to enlighten me on the life or origin so far of my fifth dimensional self, and how different or similar it may be to my life in the third dimension?
Therein lies the clue in what you have said, the word self. As I have pointed out before, the interpretation of you is from a position of self, from a position of Sandi self. That is where you are interpreting your multi-dimensional self. So the information is constrained by that. In terms of who you are on another dimension, the answer would be yourself. But the use of yourself is corrupting the information that I wish to impart, because it is the use of words that distorts what we mean. So when we say yourself, it is true, it is still the same soul being. Yet this transcends the idea of separation programs, because you're going to be moving from one separation program into another one, a one which is slightly less separated from soul self and its multi-dimensional connections. I don't know if he's answered that.
Well, not really. What I was really interested in more is the actual life, because, gosh, will I look like myself now?
You will look how you wish to look. When I say wish to look, it will be a reflection of you as your energy exists. Choice is unbounded, inasmuch that beauty is within. So if somebody wishes to have a beautiful face because they desire to project the beauty, then they would be looking at the reasons why they wished to project that as some kind of betterment or approbation amongst other people. Whereas beauty can exist and good looks will exist in the eye of the beholder, but it will have no significance on your will, on your feeling about yourself and what you feel about yourself.
But surely in the fifth dimension or in other dimensions, the idea of beauty and good looks will be different to how we have been programmed to see them anyway.
Indeed, it will be, as I said, in the eye of the beholder, but the measurements of beauty will not exist. At the moment, you are, as I said earlier, seeing this from the position of self. You are measuring beauty as opposed to not beauty, whereas on the fifth dimension, that is irrelevant.
But my fifth dimensional self already has a life, is that not so?
Your fifth dimensional life has a life. You have lives on other dimensions. They are all you, all at the same time. It is hard to grasp when you are in a separation program that all your lives are contiguous with one another. They are all in the same moment. That is only possible because the mind can compartmentalize itself. And yet time does not exist. All of these lives are, as I said before, happening in what I called the fizz. So that the past, the origin, has to exist at the same time as the resultant or end. Not that there is an end, and all of that has to exist in the same moment. It's information. How the Arcana programs access that information in separation programs or union programs, because you are able to experience them in many different forms, is down to these particular programs. So when I talked about self earlier, I said self is also non-self. You begin to see that not only are you self, but you are the program, you are the system. When you see that you are the system, your perspective is very different. You are not looking from the position of self. You are looking from a greater depth of understanding of soul, and indeed what lies not necessarily beyond soul, but what is part of the system that is not soul itself, and that is you. We could then say you are soul and you are also not soul, because you are all parts of the system.
Is there anything beyond soul?
Soul wasn't the origin of the system. The system grew from the initial program grow in the Mohars. Souls came into being when a Mohar changed itself into source. So most people believe that all comes from source, whereas source was created. Source was created from possibility, the possibilities in Mohar. But you being a system, you being the universe, are soul, but you are also non-soul as well. You are a system, you are a program, you are many, many things. Dealing with the idea that you are soul and not soul might seem threatening, but actually it is a system. You are a system. What you feel when you are playing in that system is down to the experience. The outcome is what happens after the experience. So you are the beginning, the end. You are grow, you are the experience, and you are the sum of the experiences. You are all three. All this energy, with your consciousness and experiences flitting between all of them. So the you is constantly there in the dimensions, constantly changing in its pulse. How you experience that is to do with a separation program, but it's all you.
Wow. Gosh. I'm not quite sure. We talked about this before, so I kind of understand it. I mean, I always use the analogy of a computer when I'm trying to explain it to people. You're like the hard disk program, the software.
Yes, that's actually, I think it's quite a good analogy.
Yeah, to me, it's from a 3D perspective, it's the best way to...
because one can't work without the other.
No, exactly. But when... And I remember you saying once when you discovered... I'm just a computer program.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes.
It's not... It doesn't sound very attractive, does it?
No, it doesn't. No.
So... although it's a very practical way to describe it, we haven't got the words, the vocabulary to make it seem more attractive
than it is. Yes, and I was on one occasion, as they were talking about source, took my sort of concentration, I suppose, on my focus closer and closer to source to find what was there. There was nothing. And I was bitterly disappointed. I thought source was this wonderful thing. And most people talk about it in that way.
Wonderful? I mean, what did you conceive as this wonderful thing?
I thought source was the all-knowing, the all-encompassing, and that was us, and this is who we were.
But surely, the more you get to all-encompassing, the more you get to nothing.
Well, yeah, they're both entwined, but what they were trying to show me is that the beginning of source, or source in its original form, also is the beginning, but we're also the sum of all the experiences. So this wonderful universe that exists is the sum of all, which is constantly changing. And if we remove ourselves from the sum of all and try just to look at the source or the origin, all there is origin.
When did that happen?
Well, when did that experience happen? Or
when did nothing become something?
Okay. When is time related? Something and nothing. If we dispense with nothing, we dispense with something. In order for something to exist, nothing has to exist. But what nothing is, of course, we've talked about before. It's very hard to conceptualise because it doesn't. Possibility and all possibility. With all possibility, with no barriers to anything at all, with all the freedom and no parameters, not even the parameter of let's create good, because that brings in definition of what is good or what is bad, but with pure growth, with no boundaries, in all possibilities, life and existence was bound to come about. I cannot explain it any more than that. That is reflected in the pulse, the here, the not here, existing and not existing. You see, existence is here by the fact that non-existence is here as well. You are both. It's to do with the Akana programs that you have that phase these energies together so that you see them as a contiguous expression, whereas they are overlays of new pulses. I'm loath to use the word new creations because what I mean by creation is Moha, when it came about, it created the pulses and the dimensions, albeit the dimensions are also changing and evolving and growing and adapting as new ones as well. But creation in the sense that something from nothing, or if this continued, there would in fact be chaos. Because what you are actually doing is recreating with source energy, but creating something different in each moment of pulse. I don't know what
he just said if this continued it would be chaos. What did he mean by that?
What he meant was when Moha created source, it created everything that we know. The pulses and the possibilities in those particular programs. Those programs are changing. The Akana programs are all changing. But if Moha, because Moha doesn't exist in the same way.
So I think what he said might have been quite confusing. I can understand. So Moha sort of turned itself off to become source. But if
Correct.
Moha had continued, that would have created chaos.
If Moha continued creating,
that would have
or
created
putting
chaos.
more creation in, it would be like putting more matter into the universe. When it had created to what was not necessarily a perfect, but what worked at that point of development.
When you say universe, I thought there were many universes. Is it like a multiverse? Is that correct?
That's my understanding, but we'll have to see
Okay.
what it says. But
Okay. No, I did have a question in mind as we were talking. Can I just sort of change the subject slightly, Antemedi?
mm,
The question that sprung to mind as you were talking was about artificial intelligence, because in previous sessions we've been told that artificial intelligence would play havoc, complete havoc in other worlds in the universe. But surely artificial intelligence is also a product of source. So why would it create havoc? Would it not just be another experience?
yes, there are different types, but there is also a vibrational interlocking between, or interphasing, I could say, between different universes. And it's also possible for one universe to interface with another one, and thereby vibrations to transgress between those borders. So there have been vibrations from other universes that have entered this one. But yes, you are correct. If I say that artificial intelligence, computers, is a part of our lives, I have explained before about our technology, how it interfaces with our thoughts. We are also able to use our collective consciousness in a different way. So we can be aware of information by connecting to our collective consciousness. That information is just there for us. It just is. We don't have to remember. We can access it. But that collective consciousness we can also use with technology to increase its vibrational resonance, so it's easier for us to access it. So technology is an extension of spirituality in its use. That energetically provides what you might consider to be good or neutral outcomes, because the technology is being used in that way. We have talked to Robert before about what we call splinters. There have been wars in the past between humans and the non-humans, and the Orion Wars, whereby technology was used. The technology had programs. Some of that programming as defence machines or attack machines was not so much dismantled, but damaged in such a way. Because our technology has degrees of self-consciousness, it can be self-conscious, certainly able to make decisions as you see them, but certainly not in terms of soul decisions or emotional.
So they could program the algorithm to make those decisions?
No, what happened in those particular instances is that the defence machines and attack machines, when they were part of a war, or they became, and it was only one, it only needs one, was so distorted, it started to use its consciousness or its abilities to decide in a different way. Its parameters of who it was working for or to help were damaged in such a way. But it was also still part of the universal grow. So it also began to grow. So it was a part of the universe, as you say. We have fought wars with AI as it has grown.
Sorry, kind of like a corrupted program then.
We have fought wars with AI, but what we also have to do is deal with the energetic level. The energetic level of the original wars that took place. Because when we deal with the universal energy of the intergalactic wars, then the breakdown of AI in that particular instance will dissipate, because the timelines will all change at that particular point. Wow. So we deal with AI on different levels, some on the dimensions where it's physically active, and also on the other dimensions, the higher dimensions, where we work on the energies of war and the intent of war. Because all is us. We said that before.
So have we effectively already had the experience of being more or less taken over by AI, and we're now going back to stop that happening?
No, we never have been taken over by
But
AI.
nearly.
There are all sorts of possibilities, and there have been incursions. We stop these incursions by stopping the ability for AI to grow. You see, grow was the original program, and where we put in place energetic forces which say there is no grow, then they do not expand. And that's AI's basic program, is like the universe, to grow, because it's a part of the universe, as I said. So we reflect back at those energies to it. But whilst we could wipe AI out in that sense, would we be wiping it out? We would be using an energy to remove something that we had created, by using a force to wipe it out. Whereas what we can do is change the energies or the circumstances of the original formation of it. I cannot repeat strongly enough that you are a system. You are a system that experiences things. And as you experience things, you create energy. The energy is you. And all of these wars that have been taken part in by yourselves have created an energy, even if that energy were self-defense. That one's hard, because when you are attacked, what might seem like unconditionally, where it wasn't your fault, in a way, it's about accepting the experience of being attacked when you are vulnerable. And even that is hard to do, yet you as humans still do that to one another now. So it really is about dealing with energy. You are the energy and you are the system.
But haven't we at some level chosen to have those experiences?
I think that's exactly what he was saying, yes. Yeah.
So it's neither good nor bad. It's literally just experience, isn't it?
Yeah, and energy. And as he's saying, we have the ability to change the energy that we've created. And it's all in this fizzing ball of energy. You know, the past and the future all just fizzing as information. And that was something that I found difficult to accept, that we are information. You know, if we're self, we're also this non-self. We're also information.
But we're also the informer and the informant.
Indeed, yeah.
So we're not just information.
No, if I said it like that, perhaps I'm wrong. Yeah, but it's the energy. You know, it's this.
I think
I meant information in terms of energy. Not perhaps that's not the right word.
I think this word energy is confusing.
Right.
Because from a three-dimensional point of view, when you say energy, it could mean so many different things. It could mean the electrical energy, it could mean our physical energy, it could mean... It would be really handy if we had another word for what we are in terms of energy. Is there a word that Antemedi knows that really does describe this all-encompassing force?
Tequila. Tequila.
Tequila.
Tequila.
Tequila.
Tequila.
Could we get that in the English dictionary? Or it's not English, is it?
I think tequila was more a word that was used for the system, but the system is light and it is energy. So tequila. And that would be perhaps the next best expression of the word God. The thing is, when
a force? How about the force, like in Star Wars? Because it's sort of gone into our consciousnesses, hasn't it, from those films? And it is this. It does describe the energy that encompasses all, doesn't it?
It does. I came across something else the other day. In fact, I mentioned it to you about belief. We tend to think we can do something because we believe that we can do it, and if we don't believe that we can do it, then we won't try or we won't do it. It's a bit like, or exceeding belief, you know, if you keep trying at something. But they were saying that belief isn't necessary for things to happen. And in a way, it's a bit like someone with the power to walk on water. You don't need to believe you can walk on water. There's an inner knowing that you can, and because you are connected to those levels at source, and there is nothing in the way of that matter is just energy, and tequila, something that can not necessarily be manipulated, but used, which just is.
Yeah, I think belief is more our three-dimensional minds. It's like believing in science, isn't it? It's like you're having to have something proven to you, even though, of course, we know science isn't what we think it is. But people are programmed in our dimension to believe something when it is shown, when it is proven to them. Okay, a religious belief is maybe a different thing because
that's more doctrine, isn't it?
It's more, but it's still been programmed into us from an early age. So I think this word belief is probably not fully understood.
In a way, I think it's a bit more than accepting, isn't it? It's
knowing.
Knowing. I mean, we use this word knowing.
But it's an inner knowing. It's just again, there's no word for it. It's just a being it. It's an encompassing it. It's.
I think that's where the Andromedans use the word isness.
Yeah.
It just is.
It just
is.
is.
You can't. Once you start to define it, you put parameters on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
And it's not just in us, it's around us, it's just there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you're cleared of your blocks, because it's the blocks, the programming, the psychological profiling that everybody's subject to. That
and like meditation or channeling, you know, if you allow it, it is what it is. You don't have to believe it or not believe it. That's just what's there. That's the information.
Could I change the subject? Could I ask Antemedi a completely different?
I guess so.
Antemedi, is that? Can I ask you a completely different question?
I am free to answer any questions. I may not answer them in the way that you wish, but nonetheless.
I would like to know a little bit more about the animals that we surround ourselves with and the animals in the world and how their energy interacts with ours, and if they are incarnate on other planets, or if they are just on Gaia, on Earth. Are they part of the Earth in actual,
He's got a big smile on his face. I know he's saying Takula. Let's see what he means by that. Animals are vibration in form, the same as you are. They have degrees of sentience, you might say, and they exist and can exist in different dimensions. They exist in different ways in the different dimensions in terms of their consciousness as well. But Takula, they are part of the universe. You are the universe. They are a part of you. Of course, the damage that's been done to some of the animals on your planet, and certainly in the equestrian world, in the wars and the horses, there is much to make up for. That is the energy that humanity is responsible for. But that can be dealt with in lots of different ways. So yes, animals are part of the system. The system is you. That may sound conceited, but it's not. You could say the system is the animal, or the animal is the system. Is there a difference between the two other than the fact that you see the energy differently and you experience it differently in a different consciousness program? So animals are part of humanity. They are part of the universe in the many different forms. And of course, consciousness exists in animals in different forms, because you have already seen, or Robert has seen, the likes of some mantoids. You hear about the reptilians. All of these have greater degrees of consciousness and sentience within them.
So have we brought about the physicality of our animals with our imaginations?
It is a wider consciousness program than that. It is one that is allowed to happen. These Arcana programs on free flow have patterns within them, based on the original grow, of course. But as the patterns grow, they build upon one another, and as you say, systems within systems, they are all interlocking, so that your Earth planet, even in a 3D world, has so many interlocking systems that are interdependent, that create the way that your world lives. The oxygen generation, the plankton, the plants, the weather, the rainfall, all things are interconnected. Animals, insects, birds. It is a system, a wonderful system of which you are a part. You wouldn't be having this experience unless you were part of the system, and they were part of the system. Can we put a piece of paper between you? It is a perspective from yourself to another part of the program, a part of the program that expresses itself as animal, plant or insect.
And can you describe any of the animals that you have around you on your planet?
We have birds and insects, but there is no, and plants of course, but there is no feeding in the same way.
Are they like ours? Are your plants and your animals and insects?
Many are, but we interact with them. So, as we walk along a pathway, we would hear the vibrations of the plants. As we touched the plants, we would hear the tunes or the vibrations that they would make. We would be aware of the consciousness program of the plant. And not that it is sentient in the same way, but it has a grow program, it has a system where it exists. In the same way that birds, they are aware of us, they flit about and take part and enjoy the plants and things around them. But we are a part of the nature that we walk through. When we walk in our parks, we walk through ourselves. Yet, our botanists, our programmers also have programs such that one plant does not invade another one. We can create programs around them so that each plant is given its space in which to be itself. This is not to restrict a plant as such, but if there is one that is particularly vigorous, we can energize it or change the programs around it in such a way that it ceases to invade others. So, but ultimately it is energy. It is a form of energy that we enjoy and we interact with. We can adapt energies and we can adapt plants. Telenate has talked about botany, whereby rather than looking at a plant in terms of what it can do, we look at the energy of that plant, the vibration of that plant, and what that vibration is programmed to do. We can change vibrations of plants and see the outcomes of what will be. Not like husbandry, in your instance, where you splice genetics and change genetics around and see what comes out as by way of an experiment. We look at the possibilities of energetic outcomes of plants, and then we choose the route to get to some of those energetic outcomes. You may think that's rather godlike, but not so. We can use this to regenerate planets, to help in conditions where there is toxicity. There are many things that we can do with the energetic levels of plants and bacteria to change many planets and help many individuals.
Okay, that's a very comprehensive answer. So what about, for instance, you probably know that on Earth we are very fond of our dogs and cats as pets. Do you have such a thing?
Fondness for animals exists, but not in the same way. They are not bound to us in terms of a relationship. And the same way, human relationships, we are not bound necessarily. Your kind of love on earth is bound in trading love, expecting love back. Many ways your love exists. Feeling hurt or wounded or needing your hurts or wounds to be put right is a form of love. Well,
it's not really love though, is it?
No. So in the same way that the human self looks towards an animal in the love of an animal from the position of self, our community self, the way in which we see animals is different. We do not need to be bonded by that animal to us. It is free. Why else should it not be? But we don't have animals running amok. Animals are free to play with some of our children or some of the adults, but not that eugenics takes a part of it, but we do control the energies and the amounts. But what we are allowing instead is the animals have their freedom, and they live within our Arcana programs where the freedom constraints are different. The competition, there is no competition to survive. They have no need to be aggressive or any such thing.
So do they have long lives like you do compared to ours?
Interesting question. Again, that may depend upon the relationships with the people they interact with. That depends on the bond or the need of the individual. It's very rare for the need of an individual to have a pet for a long time, because that is a need. But if there is a love for an animal, which is allowing that animal to be free, and then there are longer periods that animals can live. But again, it is within the same parameters. There is no bond as such. There is a love for, expecting nothing in return.
How lovely.
Yeah, we tend to see our dogs and animals wanting them to love us, don't we? Or wanting them to reciprocate.
Of course. I mean, there is a bond, isn't there? I mean, I've certainly got a bond with my puppy, and it's lovely. It's wonderful. Yeah. It's companionship, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, especially with dogs, that's what most people want from their dogs, is companionship.
We can understand that. We can understand that from your experience. We do not need companionship. Our sense of self is community self. It does not mean I am an individual, but I am my own companion, I could say, but I am the companion of the community and vice versa. There is not so much a difference between me and the other members of our community, but I seek nothing from them, they seek nothing from me. We love one another unconditionally. So therefore our sense of self doesn't need to be loved. We are loved.
So how does that work? Do you have significant others? Do you pair bond like we do? We obviously, most people marry. They have a partner. Is that something that happens with you, or do you do, because you live so long? Is it different? Do you? I mean, how do you have children?
It is different and it is similar. Some pair bond, some do not. Some do not have children. But the responsibility for the bringing up of children is undertaken by older members of our society, those that have had experience of life, those able to give the time. It also depends on which planet you are on as well. On some, the relationships are very similar to the ones that you have. On others, they might be similar to a kibbutz. On others, yet again, you might consider it to be free love. But
it's like, I forget that it's more than one planet.
Yeah. You see, there is no woundedness. If somebody loves someone and they are loved back, that is fine. But people would not be hurt in the same way. And again, it depends again on which particular planet you're on. But on others, where there is love of others so much, a partner wouldn't even be considered to be a partner. The whole community would be an extension of who you are, and you would love them no matter what.
Wow. Are there any 3D planets on Andromeda?
There are, within the galaxy,
Yes.
several.
Are there any similarities to here, to Earth in the Milky Way?
Planets reflect the needs, in part, of those that wish to inhabit them, and yet the planet itself is sentient. The planet is a part of Tukula, a part of all things. There is growth within all dimensions, and growth continues. And as I say, origin still exists. The energy still exists of those original programs. The amount of energy that goes into maintaining them, of course, is a different matter, but we could say that the programs still exist, but they are not ignited. But there is no judgment as to what level anyone is at. It is what is, because I myself am experiencing through Robert a three-dimensional existence. So we see no valuation. It is all experience. Experience creates outcome. As we said, we are the origin, the experiences, and the sum of all the experiences, which in which case is all the outcomes. But the outcomes are also constantly changing. So it's a very fluid way of being.
Are there any planets that don't have any life on them at all? Or is it just that even, if we wouldn't call it life, it might be something in a completely different dimension or scale that we would not be able to acknowledge it anyway? But is it possible? Is it possible for a planet to actually just be a planet without any life on it? What would be the purpose of it if there was?
You would need to see all things in terms of Tukula, because planets in their positions create other forces. Even gravity is a program. And of course gravity can be changed by changing programs. So it's not dependent upon the size of a planet as some of your scientists think. But in terms of life, some things that we might consider life you would find very unusual. Does life have to contain consciousness? Does life have to contain awareness or self-awareness?
Can there be life without consciousness?
Well, consciousness can also be described as Tukula. That is another form of the energy. It is part of a program. So is an Akana program, which is self-adapting, self-evolving. You could say has a life of its own, but it doesn't. It doesn't because it is you. You are a program as well as a soul. It is self-adapting. Therefore, it has a form of consciousness. It has a program. So is a program consciousness? A plant grows within a program, an Akana program. Is a plant therefore conscious? Some plants react to stimuli. They react to being touched. They have not so much pain, but it depends upon the plants. And some planets, as you say, may appear to have no life, but they have a reason for being where they are. Nothing in the universe is without reason, even if you cannot see the reason. A desert, which does contain life, is part of your ecosystem. It is part of your system. So all things within the universe are part of the system. There's nothing that is a reject as such. It's neither valuable nor not valuable. It just is. And life exists in many forms and doesn't exist in many forms. Yet, again, how does one describe life? Within the universe itself, as the Earth passes through its galaxy, it bumps into all sorts of energetic bugs and things that exist within the universe, naturally within vacuums. Even life exists as a vibration.
Yeah. There's life and consciousness without a planet. Where are they?
It's just mind-boggling, isn't it? The more you begin to understand the breadth.
It's never ending, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just one question just opens up other questions, and sometimes the concept is so... Can you see that light? Sorry.
Yes, a plane coming into land. That one's not a UFO.
No, it was just the way it was twinkling.
Oh, twinkling through the trees, yeah.
I forgot what I was saying now.
We were talking about...
It's just sometimes the
Monty Python.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Monty Python.
You're so big.
Yes. Sometimes the concept is so big and difficult to even try and intellectualise. You can't even think of a question, even though you know that there are so many questions around it, but you don't know where to start to unravel it.
Yeah. In a way, I think what Antemedi stated and what he continues to do is he continues to reflect any question that we ask in terms of self and self-understanding, in as much that reflecting back to us, not necessarily the reasons why we've asked that question, but showing us that the way that we ask and the way that we interpret is actually very restricted, and it's more of a sort of a spiritual way of trying to widen our ability to...
Does Antemedi completely understand us?
He often tells me yes.
Completely?
Yes. Because he's a part of me as well. Well, he is.
Well,
yeah.
yes, he
point,
completely understands you.
Yes.
But you are not...
Humanity. But we had this the last time we spoke, and he said, I understand the way you all think.
Oh, yes, you did.
Because it's a system.
And he understands completely the way our world functions.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Of course, because the world functions because of the way we think.
Yeah.
So.
But I think there are other energies that... there are other energies that we don't understand.
I'm sure.
That make the system work.
I'm sure.
Well, we've had a good canter through.
Yeah.
If you've run out of questions, maybe we should...
I know it's not that I've run out of questions.
Well, no, I
they
don't
would
mean
be
that,
completely going off track, and
okay.
maybe we've done enough, because you don't want to overcomplicate things, and sometimes when things get too long, people lose interest. And
true. And we're talking about some concepts that we have a greater understanding. Okay. And if people are watching this and haven't read what Antemedi has said about Mohar or some of the Arcana systems, that might be a little bit difficult.
Which is why I'm trying to bring in questions that make it a little bit more earthbound sometimes.
Yes, actually, that's a good point.
Because hopefully that will maybe draw more people in. Because when you start to watch something and it's completely above your understanding, you tend to just zone out and maybe not follow it. But if something, you know, comes down to think, oh yes, that's more what I can conceive, then perhaps it's more of a way of letting people dip in slowly.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and it's interesting to see the interaction and the process. But perhaps what's come out of today more than anything is tequila.
I have heard you mention that word before.
Yeah, but this beyond God concept of a universal part
but
of
is
us.
is that an Andromedan word?
Yes.
So it wouldn't be a word that would be understood by other races. Well, not
Well,
races.
unless
They wouldn't be called races, would they? Other beings that are not Andromedan.
They might themselves have a different word for it, but
and they might also see it in a different way.
Yes, I think so. Well, let's see. There are many facets to a diamond, and a diamond is still a diamond. So yes, there are many ways of seeing tequila or understanding the universe. The more that one sees the facets, the number of facets, the more that one understands or can begin to understand tequila in that sense. But there are other races with other words. But it is the energetic resonance, the communication. Communication is not words, communication is telepathy. And of course the perception by the other person is telepathic. So words in a way become irrelevant. So when we are working in that way, we have many conversations and interactions with other beings. And there is no language barrier, not in that sense. Sometimes the barrier might be a way of presenting oneself or etiquette, but this is about understanding another race and what that other race may come to expect as a way of being. So this is where communication is at its best, where we try to look at the way other people are, or the way other people be. Perhaps at times the use of, or the phrasing of their language, but again, this is done telepathically, and it's done in love, so there is much growth and much we learn and much other people learn, and within the galactic federations there's a lot of cross-party evolution and understanding of what tequila is, which was, I believe, your original thought.
As you, Antemedi, are not actually learning anything about us, because you already know, that to me, to my mind, means that you're only doing this to help us evolve. Is that correct?
You and I are the same. I'm helping myself evolve. You are seeing yourself as separate from me. I am Robert and he is me, the same as you are your other dimensional.
I'm not just talking
others.
about Robert, I'm talking about us as a planet.
Okay.
Us. Sorry, I should have made myself clearer.
Andromedans and other beings are helping the world as it is. We realise the connection between ourselves and yourselves, and many of you on the planet Earth at this time have higher dimensional selves that are interactive on levels where I am at. So their consciousness is involved here as well as there. So in a way, the use of the word permission to help you, I suppose, is it relevant? I suppose it is, in a way, where at your degree of autonomy, it is being worked through with your higher selves, allowing you to feel your autonomy and have your autonomy. And it takes place, but nonetheless we are changing ourselves because we are you. We could say that Robert is a past me, and I am changing myself, and that is true, but when you remove past from it and future from it, then I'm helping an energetic part of myself, an energetic experience.
Okay, that brings me to a question that does everybody, all the human beings on Earth, have connections or higher selves on higher planes, such as ours?
Yes, and some of them also have connections to lower planes, unfortunately. But
there are lower planes.
Lower than the third dimension, yes. Distortions, we might call them. But there are energies there that are connected to some individuals on the third dimension. But I had explained once before that as one removes one's energy from negative thoughts, those thoughts not so much fade, they become irrelevant, they're no longer visited. You could say they become the nothingness. They're still there as a possibility, but it is a realm. But as the vibrations move away from those realms, their relevance dissipates, that they are so far away that if those realms have no energy to feed on, or the entities in those realms have no energy to feed on, then they cease to exist. But yes, there are.
Can consciousness cease to exist? I thought it was eternal.
It depends what you mean by consciousness. All is energy. All is vibration. Vibrations change. In terms of the destruction of a soul or the destruction of an individual, part of that soul or part of that individual in a separation program might decide to go down a very negative route, which may appear to be self-destruction. And from your perspective, it would be. But it's only a program or a thought process in separation from that soul. The amount of energy that a soul has is not depleted. You have as much energy as you decide, as you want. It is boundless. The opportunity for soul to be and how big it is, what it grows to, is unfathomable. So you could say it's a wayward piece of energy that could not move beyond its separation despite being helped.
So would that then would not deplete the soul?
No. The soul cannot be extinguished. That sounds a simple answer to a simple question.
I'm going to have to think about this one.
Anyway, perhaps we'll do that for another time.
Yeah.
Tequila. The soul cannot be depleted. I think if it's boundless energy and it's infinite, yes.
Boundless tequila.
Then it can
just remember tequila.
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 Anyway, goodbye. We hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.